Okay, let's get this show on the road. Welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to have an actual audience in the seats this evening. So with that, I'm going to call this regular council meeting of the town of Fort Frances, it being session number 50, to order. We'll begin with a territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are within Treaty 3 territory and that the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people and the homeland of the Métis Nation. As taught by a Treaty 3 Ojibwe elder, when we speak about the land, we recognize that we are the land. The land is all of us, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. The land is a collection of our history, our current experiences, and our future together. We offer this land acknowledgement in the spirit of reconciliation, recognizing the historical and contemporary impacts of colonialism, while committing to working together as Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to build a better future. Councillors, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest, and if so, state the general nature thereof? Seeing none. We'll go to item number 4, which is delegations and deputations, and 4.1. We have Mr. Lincoln Dunn from the Fort Frances Times. Come on up, Lincoln.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Every Thursday marks a tradition at the Fort Frances Times. It's when our dedicated carriers and staff set out to deliver copies of our Thursday bulletin to every house in Fort Frances. As one of a few newspapers left in Northwestern Ontario, at the core of our work is our commitment to share the stories that define Fort Frances. From the latest decisions by Council to community-wide initiatives helping those in need, our goal is to keep our readers informed on what's impacting their community every week. Updates on local initiatives, education events, community happenings, or local sports, the Times serves as the window on your community, helping residents to stay connected and engaged. We document not only individual stories, but also the collective milestones that have shaped our town's history and its future. In an era where Canadian communities lack a local newspaper, many of them, we feel keenly the responsibility to continue performing that role in our community. To that end, we have recognized an opportunity for optimizing the delivery of our Thursday Bulletin newspaper and are asking for the support of Council in pursuing this initiative. The Fort Frances Times is requesting the town of Fort Frances adopt a resolution to give the Times permission to place newspaper distribution boxes at approximately 30 locations in town, as is required under bylaw 1910, being a bylaw to regulate the erection of signs and other advertising devices within the town of Fort Frances. These boxes would offer residents a convenient way to access their free Thursday newspaper at their leisure, while also enabling us to reduce our environmental footprint by cutting down on the fossil fuels used by staff to deliver door to door. Further, our staff would be able to distribute the paper more quickly and efficiently every week to these centralized locations. By providing residents with this convenient way to get their Thursday newspaper, we hope to reignite interest from both new and current readers. And we can get the newspaper out that much faster. Other papers our papers aren't delivered until the early evening. With these proposed boxes, the Thursday Bulletin will be available everywhere in town by the middle of the afternoon. Perfect timing for picking up on the way home. We would further recognize and request that the town of Fort Frances, you'd recognize our unique role that we play as the recorder of the town's history and stories, as well as the number of boxes we are placing around town, and consider waiving or reducing user fees associated with placement of the proposed newspaper boxes. We see this opportunity as an important part of our ongoing efforts to ensure the sustainability of the Fort Frances Times and preserve local print news for years to come. Our team remains committed to delivering your local news in the manner that best serves you as we work towards a sustainable future for Northwestern Ontario's premier community newspaper, the Fort Frances Times. I thank you for the opportunity to present this request and for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councillors, do you have any questions or comments? Councillor Behan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Mr. Dunn, can you give us an idea of what the cost might be for the Times to put those newspaper boxes out? based on the fees that you're asking us to look at, maybe perhaps waiving? You have an idea, a ballpark figure?
Absolutely. My understanding from reading the bylaw is that it's an annual fee, and it's approximately between $1,700 and $1,800 a year.
That's for all the 30 boxes
That's
combined?
for all
That's your
30
total
boxes.
Cost to you for a year. Okay, thank you.
Further questions, councillors? Seeing none. First of all, I want to thank you for coming, Mr. Dunn, and I do want to recognize the Fort Francis Times as being essential to Fort Francis in this day and age when we're losing community newspapers. Every time we lose one, I think the community dies a little bit. So we really salute the Fort Francis Times for continuing to publish and performing a valuable public service. As you probably know from your discussions with the clerk, council makes no decisions on delegations that same evening. So what I will do is I'm going to put an oral resolution on the floor asking administration to bring forward a report on this matter, which council then can consider at a future meeting. So with that, I would like a mover and seconder to, you haven't heard the resolution yet, but so the resolution is that council brings forward a report for a future meeting, and that's moved by Councillor McTaggart, seconded by Councillor Olson. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call that question. All in favor? That's carried. No one is opposed. So again, thank you very much. We receive your report with gratitude.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Then we're on to item number 5, which is presentations. And we have a presentation. This is the annual presentation in accordance with our committee bylaw on MAT tax by Mr. Peter Howie. Welcome, Peter.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Peter Howie, Chair of the Fort Francis Municipal Accommodation Tax Committee, and I prepared a presentation with, in fact, Tanis Drysdale has prepared a presentation for me on some of the activities of the committee. So next slide, please. The MAT Advisory Committee is a committee of the Rainy River Future Development Corporation. The committee provides advice to the RFDC on tourism matters. This includes the strategic planning on tourism expenditures. The RFDC receives half of the funds that are generated through the MAT tax, which is a levy on room taxes in the hotels in Fort Francis. The bylaw that enacted that tax established the committee, and it specifically, I think, needs to be noted that the MAT committee is not, in fact, a committee of the town of Fort Francis, but a committee of the RFDC. Our committee includes representations from hoteliers, representatives of amateur sports associations, the museums, as well as representatives from key festivals and event holders in our community. A representative council is also invited to our committee, and the mayor is, of course, always welcome. Next slide. The MAT works in 3 categories, the first being marketing current activities, the second being supporting tourism-related enterprises, and the third is building new products. When the MAT committee was established, it began its work by building a strategic plan that laid out over 70 actions and activities to be undertaken to help bolster tourism in the community. And in fact, I think after that was developed, I presented at the previous term of council on at a high level on what those activities were. Many of these activities and recommendations were targeted at areas that were under the purview of the municipality. And we thank the town for actioning some of those recommendations, such as tidying up the entry billboards and the recent announcement by the town of a cleanup day. We look forward to further updates and opportunities to partner on projects such as the Gateway Zone Plan, and I'll share some of these opportunities later in my presentation. Now, one of the things that happened that kind of derailed things for the MAT was that we had kind of just got up and going. We had our strategic plan, and then COVID hit, which closed the border, created a lot of uncertainty in terms of tourism numbers, There was a precipitous drop in hotel room bookings, and just a lot of uncertainty as to what would be allowed for the different events and such, and really unclear as to how long it was going to go on for. So we made the strategic choice not to spend a lot of money during this time period and instead, save our revenues to assist in recovery efforts. But we did do some small promotions during the low risk periods to attract visitors from the rest of Northwestern Ontario as well as Winnipeg. During this time, we've developed some key marketing platforms. You can view our website at Destination Fort Frances. Most of our social marketing is based in Facebook, and that matches what our current audience's activity would be on social networks. But we have a small offering on TikTok, and we're building more content on that platform as well as YouTube as video, to help us have video assets. So we've had good success with Facebook, and we've run paid ads throughout the year. In the last month, our ad from Destination Fort Frances reached over 325,000 viewers in our target areas. In 2024, 12,000 people clicked through that ad to go straight to our Fort Frances website. Sort of click through the next slide just to get a sense of what our ads look like. In 2024, we have begun a golf campaign. This runs in Google Ads and as banners on Golf Digest page. We've also advertised and purchased memberships in Sunset Country. We've partnered on projects with them and attended the Duluth Trade Show with them as well. And in May 2024, we've begun an advertising display with the International Falls Airport. All right, so that's our efforts in terms of marketing. Moving on to partnerships, the MAT has supported community-based tourism-related events. This include tournaments, the Bass Championship, as well as the new water park. We're also involved in training and support. The MAT has hosted several workshops in the community encouraging product development and offering one-on-one support with industry experts on experience-based tourism. MAT funds continue to be utilized to support social media training. And anyone listening tonight who may be interested in applying for funds to support their efforts can contact Jeff at rfdc.on.ca. So for 2024, we're going to begin distributing a Fort Frances brochure. This will be made available at the border, and we actually intend to hire a person who can essentially leaflet the brochure. So if anyone listening this evening is looking for a part-time job, whether they're a young person or a student in school, or even a semi-retired person looking for an opportunity to get out and meet our American friends, feel free to drop off your resume at the RFDC office above the credit union. We have a formalized grant application process in place to support tourism events. We've had 2 successful applicants so far. We've introduced a financial assistance package that will help defray labor acquisition costs for hoteliers or to help them invest in new technologies. Working with the museum, we will launch 2 tours at Fort Frances, with one will be completed this summer. We always continue to build up our library of videos, which we can put through our social media content. And finally, in late fall, we will host a Catch the Bass Month. Details of that will follow soon. One of the things I'm most excited about as Mat Chair is that this year we've started working thoughtfully to support tourism projects with neighboring First Nations, and we hope to have some joint promotional opportunities to announce soon. We've also established a fund to support small businesses interested in building an ice shack rental business on Rainy Lake. And beginning in 2024, we'll be marketing Fort Frances as a conference location. So we look forward to engaging in discussions with Council and how we can partner together to improve our community entrance signage. And here we have provided a suggestion. As you know, it's become almost an expectation of any Canadian center to have a life-size sign that people can stand with and be photographed with. So that's something we're interested in doing with the town of Fort Frances and contributing some of our funds to. We're also exploring ways to grow the size of our tournaments, as these are critical ways in which we can fill empty hotel rooms at off-peak times. And so we're interested in partnering with the town of Fort Frances to hire a dedicated staff person who can help build up the infrastructure around tournaments. We are interested in the continued improvement of this community. Tourists want to travel to places that look attractive. Most of our tourists are coming from the International Falls Crossing. That's why the MAT committee thinks it's important that the town move forward with the Gateway project that has been, I think, in the conceptual design phase for a number of years now, and that's something that we would be willing to invest some of our money towards. But at a minimum, we'd like to see added parking and access to the downtown for visitors with trucks and trailers. We want to take this opportunity to thank the staff of the museum for everything that they've been doing to support tourism, from running the market and hosting events, including Snow-A-Rama, and the numerous displays that they put up around the town. It helps this community offer a special product for its visitors. Danielle, the museum director, is a huge asset to the community, and she's been a key part of our committee. We hope that the town continues to recognize the importance of the work that the museum is doing to build partnerships and further tourism. Finally, by applying for grants from the federal and provincial government to stretch our dollars and budgeting savings each year for capital partnerships that will aid in creating tourism products, we have a significant pot of money that we hope the town can take advantage of and also apply its own funds to further and grow our community's economic opportunities in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howie. That was an excellent presentation. I guess I should thank Tanis as well. It was really eye-catching. And I also would like to take this opportunity to recognize the work of the MAT committee, having had the privilege of attending a few of your meetings. I really recognize the creativity and the hard work that you do towards stimulating tourism in our economy. So thank you very much. And on behalf of council, we receive your report with thanks.
Okay, thank you.
That brings us to item number 6, which is correspondence. 6.1 is correspondence dealing with the Provincial Day of Action on Litter. And I'm very pleased to say that the town of Fort Frances is going to be taking part in this. This is a provincial initiative. And we encourage groups or private individuals to become involved. There'll be some exciting announcements coming out soon, so please watch our social media or our website for more details. Moving to item 6.2, this is correspondence from the District of Rainy River Services Board. Council has been invited to attend their AGM, which is going to occur at 1:30 at St. Michael's School. And if you're interested in going, they request that you respond, and you can respond to Mrs. Jocelyn Nielsen at the DSAB. Any questions or comments? Item 6.3 is correspondence from the Lakers regarding the facility rental policy. Does council have any questions or comments on that issue? Seeing none. 6.4 is correspondence from the Border Figure Skating Club, and I see that they are well represented here tonight, so welcome and thank you for coming. Any questions on the correspondence from the Border Figure Skating Club? Seeing none, we'll move on to council reports on board activity and committee activity. So I'll begin. My report is written and it's included in the agenda, so I'm not going to read every item of it in the interest of saving time, but there's one that I'm really pleased to read. I want to congratulate the Fort Francis U13C Leafs competitive hockey team. This is part of the Fort Francis Women and Girls Hockey Association. They recently won the Ontario Women's Hockey Association Provincial Championships with an overtime 2-1 win over the Mitchell Meteors. The Leafs started their quest for gold, winning all 3 games in their round robin, and they continued to win their games in the quarter and semifinals to earn their spot in the championship game. And so the Leafs brought home their gold medals along with a 6-foot championship banner that's going to be hung in the Memorial Sports Center. This is the first time that the Fort Francis Girls and Women's Hockey Association sent a team to the provincial championships, and first time was a charm because they won. I'm also pleased to say that the Leafs consist of 13 local girls, including 2 girls from Couchiching First Nation, 1 girl from the Tangikaming First Nation, and 1 girl from Sabiscon First Nation. The team was coached by Daniel Redford and managed by Amy Matheson. The U13 division was a very competitive division. It featured 16 teams from across Ontario, and each of them had to earn their right to compete in the provincial championships by defeating many other teams. So the competition was fierce. These championships took place in the Greater Toronto Area and welcomed a total of 652 teams across 6 age categories and 5 skill levels. So my shout out of the week goes to the Fort Francis Leafs for their outstanding achievement in winning provincial gold and in being excellent ambassadors of our community as they represented Fort Francis in the provincial championships. We're all very proud of these amazing athletes and their coaches. The second item I'd like to briefly go over is on Friday, the town of Fort Francis held their 2nd annual Volunteer Appreciation Day and Barbecue. And in spite of the weather, it was a very good turnout. It was very positive. There was a very warm atmosphere. And what a pleasure it was to be able to thank and to welcome in person the volunteers of our community who do such a good job in improving life here in Fort Francis for all of us. And I want to give special thanks to the Clerks Department for their organization, and then of course thanks to administration, staff, council, and public works for helping out with the setup, cooking, serving, and cleanup, and a special shout out to the arena staff who are also very helpful. It's very, very gratifying to be able to meet our volunteers in person, shake their hands, and say thank you to them. I want to comment briefly on another meeting that was held in town. Recently, we had a full-day meeting held at the Sportsplex Auditorium to lay the foundation for setting up a coalition to deal with human trafficking. People tend to think that it can't happen here, but human trafficking is occurring locally in Fort Francis, and it's something that needs to be dealt with. So, Candidago Ilquay's Health Services sponsored the meeting, and I want to extend my thanks to our CAO, Travis Robb, and Councillor Burnetta for attending the meeting along with me. This meeting was very well attended by many community nonprofits, as well as Treaty 3 Police and the OPP. The meeting itself took an interactive form with good participation by everybody there, and a follow-up meeting will be called to continue this work. And the town of Fort Francis will be will continue to be a part of this coalition. Just a brief mention, there has been in the past, the recent past, some concern over the tolls, the fares on the International Bridge. Work is ongoing on that behind the scenes. I recently had a meeting with the mayor of International Falls. The last time we had a meeting of the full committee to deal with the International Bridge, it was very well attended, with something like about 40 attendees from levels of government in the United States and Canada. And we set up two committees, one a long-term committee to look at getting a new bridge, and the other a short-term committee to look at reducing the fares. And I just want to mention that work is ongoing on that. And I think I will leave it at that, and I will go to Councillor Bien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. I first would like to report on the Rainy River District Municipal Association's executive meeting that was held last Wednesday, April 17th at 6 p.m. at the Chapel Municipal Office in Barwick, with the main order of business being the 2024 budget. In calculating the levies each municipality pays to the RRDMA each year, I noticed the Secretary Treasurer was still using population figures from the 2019 Ontario Municipal Directory, which indicated a population of 7955 for Fort Frances. I said, I don't think that's true anymore. And when I questioned this, the Secretary Treasurer was able to access a copy of the 2024 Ontario Municipal Directory, which lists our population at 7466. As a result, our levy, based on the current rate of 90 cents per capita, drops from $7,159.50 to $6,719.40, which is a savings of $440.10. Unfortunately, using the 2024 figures, the overall district population dropped from 17,245 to 16,503, which results in the levy total falling from $15,520.50 to $14,852.70, or a difference of $667.80. However, with the proposed addition of the Township of Sioux Narrows Nestor Falls to the RRDMA and their projected levy of $654.30, the actual shortfall from 2023 to 2024 is only $13.50. As such, the executive is recommending keeping the municipal levy at 90 cents per capita for 2024, which will be up for approval at the next general membership meeting, which is scheduled for Wednesday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Emo Valley Community Center in Emo, which is when the budget itself will also be up for approval. Also up for approval at next month's general membership meeting is an amendment to the RRDMA's constitution for the inclusion of the Township of Sioux Narrows Nestor Falls, permission for RRDMA President Doug Hartnell to attend the annual conference on August 18th to 21st in Ottawa, and the renewal of the term and rate for the GIC in the amount of $12,042.50 that is coming due on May 29th, 2024. As well, the executive decided, on my suggestion, to invite Brandis Oliver of Gish Kandango Ilkwi Health Services to speak on the issue of human trafficking, as well as the recent efforts underway, as the mayor alluded to in his report, to highlight this problem and how organizations like the RRDMA can help tackle it. I'd also like to mention that the first meeting involving the subcommittee of Fort Frances Alberton, I've gone too far down, of the Fort Frances Alberton area and Riverside Healthcare is set for Tuesday, May 21st from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. If council or administration has any questions or issues they'd like to see raised with Riverside, please let me know prior to this meeting. Next, I'd like to report on the annual Business and Community Expo, which is being held by the Fort Frances Chamber of Commerce this Friday, April 26th from 4 to 8 p.m. and again Saturday, April 27th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Fort Frances Curling Club. Admission is free, but those attending are encouraged to donate non-perishable items to the local food bank. Besides about 35 exhibitors being on hand, fantastic castles once again will be set up Friday from 3 to 7 p.m., Saturday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and even on Sunday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., weather permitting, and with the cost being $12 a child. There also will be a movie shown in the Curling Club parking lot on both Friday and Saturday night starting at 8:50 p.m., with the cost being $8 for adults and $5 for children. It's a different movie each night. As well, two regular events will be part of the expo once again. First, the Laverondery Hospital Auxiliary will be holding its annual Rockin' for a Reason fundraiser in support of the purchase of 3 Broda chairs and new window coverings for patient rooms. To help with the cause, there also is a dueling rockers challenge going on between Leon's and Green's Brand Source, which people are welcome to make a donation to. And the Lions Club's always popular Baylor Jail event will be held on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. with funds being raised for Best for Kitty and Rough Q. Donation of food for either group also are welcome. And I do know Councillor Mackey will be one of the inmates at the Baylor Jail. I'm sure he'd be looking for any kind of...
I'm looking for any donations to help me stay out.
That concludes my report for this month, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bien. Moving on to the consent agenda. Item 8.2. These are council meeting minutes. The recommendation reads that council approve the regular council meeting minutes of April 8th, 2024 be approved as presented. 8.3 are boards and committee meeting minutes. The recommendation reads that the boards and committee meeting minutes be received as information, and these are the minutes of the Committee of Adjustment, March 2024. 8.4, we have correspondence from the Northumberland County Resolution, from Northumberland County. Their resolution reads that the County of Prince Edward review of Ontario Works on Ontario Disability Support Program financial assistance rates is something that we want to support, and so the recommendation reads that the Council of the Town of Fort Frances supports the resolution from the County of Northumberland dated March 25th, 2024, relating the review of Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program financial assistance rates as attached hereto and forming part of this resolution. 8.5 is the Delegation of Authority Quarterly Report. Recommendation reads that Council receive report AR-24-0572 pertaining to the Delegation of Authority Quarterly Report with respect to grants, agreements, and applications. 8.6 is official notice of intent from the Integrity Commissioner. Recommendation reads, the Council receives report AR-24-0570 regarding the official notice of intent from the Integrity Commissioner to report on the Code of Conduct complaint for Councillor Kircher, and that Council acknowledges that the Integrity Commissioner for the Town of Fort Frances has included an investigation into the Code of Conduct complaint involving Councillor Kircher. An overview of the report will be presented at the May 13th, 2024 regular Council meeting. 8.7, this is a Seniors Month request. Recommendation reads that Council agree with the administration that the $500 request for program fees for Seniors Month in June is covered through the Senior Centre existing events and activities budget. Councillors, would you like to pull any of those items? Councillor Bien?
I'd like to pull item 8.7, please.
Any other items, councillors? Councillor Kircher?
I would also like to pull 8.7.
All right. Anything else, councillors? Okay, dealing with 8.7, Councillor Bien?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just looking at this, and so I'm understanding that there's $1,000 budgeted for events and activities at the senior center, and I imagine that's for the year. I'm wondering if I'm curious, how much money does the senior center generally put towards the seniors month and the expenditure they have from that? Because if we take the $500 from that, there's only $500 left over for the rest of the year for events and activities. I'm not sure how that would play out. So I'm just, I'd be willing to, if we can figure out what those answers are, maybe Mr. Young, you can answer that, because otherwise I'd be willing to donate $500 out of our public relations fund. I'm just curious how much of that $500 would eat into their budget for other things. Thank you.
Manager Young.
Thank you, and through the chair to Councillor Behan. So when we were doing the 2024 operating budget, the seniors events and activities line was considerably higher, and it was one of our reductions going into this budget year, because the majority of the events that are run at the senior center are sponsored through grants. For example, our active living fair, where there is no actual cost to the senior center on running that, and so that activities line over the 3-year average actual spend was under the $1,000 that we budgeted for this year here. This would be the first year that the senior center is organizing these events in this way here. And so the recommendation comes from utilizing that budget line and then potentially asking for donations at future events if that line has run out.
Thank you, Manager Young. Councilor Kircher.
I made a mistake, actually. It was 8.6 that I would like to pull.
Okay, going to 8.6, Councilor Kircher.
Okay, I would just, in reading the recommendation, I just like confirmation. It says, Council acknowledges that the Integrity Commissioner for the Town of Fort Frances has concluded an investigation into a code of conduct complaint involving Councilor Kircher. Is that correct?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, that is correct. That's a code of conduct complaint.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a copy of that correspondence?
Sorry, the question is?
That
The notice of the Integrity Commissioner you would like?
it said the commissioner acknowledges has concluded an investigation into a code of conduct complaint. Can I have a copy of that correspondence?
Of the notice of the Integrity Commissioner, yes, I can send you that.
Is that yes?
Yes, I can
Thank
send
you.
you the notice of that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilor Kircher. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, I have a recommendation then that reads, Council approve the consent agenda as follows. Agenda items 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, and 8.5. I need a mover and seconder for that, please. Councilor Olson, Councilor Mackey. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? It's carried and no one is opposed. Then, going back to item 8.7, I have a recommendation that Council agree with the administration that the $500 request for the program fees for Seniors Month in June is covered through the Senior Center existing events and activities budget. Mover and seconder, please. Mover and seconder, please. Councilor Olson, Councilor Bien. Any discussion on this one? Councilor Bien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Just to clarify then, Mr. Young, if they run out of their $1,000 budget for the rest of the year, we would look at then maybe donating at that time to something specific that comes along if they use up their budget line? Thank you.
Manager Young.
Through the chair, yes, we would bring a report the same way forward here, and the recommendation might read differently. At this point here, we have not spent anything from that budget line for the year.
Thank you, Manager Young. Councilor McTaggart.
I think that Mr. Young may have answered. Had any money been spent, and I thought from a previous budget release at the last meeting that there was some amount used out of that account.
Manager Young.
Can I have a minute to look into that?
Hopefully I was reading the right line.
You're good, Councilor McTaggart? Just waiting for the answer. While we're waiting for that, I'll welcome Councilor Bernetta. Can you hear me, Councilor Bernetta? Good.
Apologies for being late.
So through the chair, I thank you for that, Councilor McTaggart. $230 roughly has been taken out from that account.
Further discussion? Councilor Mackey?
I believe I'm partial to option 2, where we just provide them with $500. Like, this senior center runs on a shoestring operation to begin with, and I think $500, they're putting on program events for the whole month of the seniors month, and really $500. I think we should just do that. Thanks.
Okay, so you're speaking in opposition to the motion and you'll be voting against the motion. Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question then. All in favor? Please put your hands up if you're in favor. Opposed? Motion is defeated. Would someone like to make a new motion? Councilor Mackey?
I move that we approve option 2 of the report for the seniors month request.
Which is providing $500 from the
Providing
council,
$500 to the senior center
from the council public relations budget.
from the council's public relations fund.
Okay, can I get a mover and second on that resolution, please? Councillor Behan, Councillor Olson. Any discussion on that resolution? I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, and then moving back to item 8.6. Recommendation reads the council receives report AR-24-0570 regarding the official notice of intent from the Integrity Commissioner report on the Code of Conduct complaint for Councillor Kircher. And the council acknowledges that the Integrity Commissioner for the town of Fort Francis has concluded an investigation into a Code of Conduct complaint involving Councillor Kircher. An overview of this report will be presented at the May 13, 2024 regular council meeting, and Councillor Kircher will be provided with a copy of the information he requested. Can I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councillor Behan, Councillor Mackey. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. No one is opposed. Okay, that brings us to item 9, which is the Administration and Finance Division reports. I have a resolution. Recommendation reads that council agree with the recommendation of administration to approve report AR-24-0564, which recommends approval of the 2024 budget estimates in the amount of $117,684 as submitted by the Fort Francis Business Improvement Association, and approves the tax rate and BIA special charge levy in the amount of $45,000 with additional use of prior year surplus to balance the budget. Further, a bylaw to authorize the levying and collection of a special charge of taxes upon the business improvement area will follow. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please, to get it on the floor? Councillor McTaggart, Councillor Olson. Discussion on this. Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? That's carried, and no one is opposed. Item 9.2 deals with capital financing, and the recommendation reads that council approves the additional reserve fund allocations in the amount of $368,010.09 to fund the remaining capital expenditures as indicated in report AR-24-0565, and further, that it is noted that the total reserve fund allocation is $1,480,255.10 lower than the budgeted amount for 2023. Can I get a mover and seconder on this, please? Councillor McTaggart? Need a seconder. Councillor Mackey? Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. No one is opposed. (9.3). This is a good one. The recommendation reads that council direct the necessary bylaw be drafted, appointing the successful applicant, Mr. Dave Robertson, as interim fire chief. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor McTaggart. Councillor Bernetta. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Congratulations, and a bylaw will be brought forth later in the meeting. Item 9.4 deals with adopting a public notice policy. The recommendation reads that Council receive report AR-24-0568 regarding the adoption of a public notice policy, and that a bylaw be presented to adopt the proposed policy, and that bylaw 64-02 be repealed. Could I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Bien, Councillor Olson. Any discussion? Councillor Bien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'm looking at this and it says here under, if I can find it here. Oh, my goodness. I just lost it. But I thought it said, here I got it now. The policy recognizes digital notices as sufficient. Does that mean that we would no longer publish in the Fort Francis Times these public notices? Because I just want to make sure that while people visit our website and have access to our electronic newsletter, I just want to make sure that we don't also, because I'm afraid that people maybe don't have access to computers. Maybe they don't have a computer, they can't afford a computer. I just want to make sure what you mean by we're only it's digital notice is sufficient. I'm just wondering what that means, Madam Clerk.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. So absolutely, there are still requirements under various legislation to advertise specific statutory notices as a newspaper article. And then those circumstances, we will certainly continue that. At this point in time, none of these legislations have been amended to relieve the requirement of those statutory notices under certain publishing of newspapers. The challenges that you'll see is, like, for example, I've worked in smaller municipalities where they don't have newspapers. So there, you have to find other mechanisms. Although legislation says you are going to publish in a newspaper, you have to find different methods in order to do that, and you're technically still not compliant with legislation at that point in time. But for us here in Fort Francis, we're fortunate to continue to have a newspaper, and so therefore we are going to continue for those statutory notices that do require newspaper releases.
Thanks for that clarification, Madam Clerk. I just want to make sure that as long as there was a newspaper here in town, we'd still be going that route instead of going strictly digital. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bien. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Yes, Councillor Bernetta.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through you to the clerk, on page 9 of 9, it indicates what we would do in terms of a council vacancy. But the last column there says when an emergency is declared. It seems to me that there's maybe a bit of a typo there. I just didn't understand how a declared emergency had anything to do with the council vacancy.
Thank you. It's noted. We will review that item as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Burnett, I saw that as well and thought the same thing. I think it referred to one of the other ones above. So that'll be corrected. And with that correction, any further discussion? I'll call the question then, assuming that this gets corrected. All in favor? And that is carried. No one is opposed. Okay, that brings us to item 10, which is Community Services Division reports. Put a recommendation on the floor. The recommendation reads that Council receive report AR-24-0563 as additional information to report AR-24-0553, and that Council adopt the suggested edits to the Facility Rental Policy 2.5 as presented in report AR-24-0553, and that Council direct administration to present an updated 2024 Schedule of Fees bylaw, including the new fees for dedicated room use and storage space at the Memorial Sports Center, to Council for approval, and that council direct administration to implement the policy updates according to option 1 as outlined in the analysis options section of report AR-24-0553. Could I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Bien, Councillor Olson. So before I go to councilors for discussion, I believe Manager Young wanted to speak to this.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the report in front of you speaks to the results of the conversations that was had with district arenas at the request of the council at our last meeting. However, there's been some correspondence that has come out in between the time that this report was written. And so I wanted to provide a little bit of clarity to some of the points that were brought up in those correspondence, 6.3 and 6.4. In reference to games, shows, tournaments, and practices that were potentially excluded from the report that was brought forward, we had a discussion at the last council meeting about the different metrics that was used to look at the use of ice at the sports center. And so when it came to the specific center groupings of the Muskies, the Academy, the Lakers, and the border skating, the results were similar with the different metrics. The report spoke to one version of those metrics, not to all of the versions of the metrics. And so game shows, tournaments, and practices were still included when coming up with that finalized list for council to consider. Again, depending on which metric was chosen, the middle group changes slightly, and I have some of those pieces if council would like to know some of those numbers, but I'm not going to go into them right now. Additional rentals of other rooms in the facility may have been done, potentially at no charge. Some of our user groups, we allow them to use our conference rooms and our meeting rooms without an additional charge when they're having their monthly meetings. Or, you know, if a group on the ice is looking for a little bit of off-ice training and go into the auditorium for a half an hour, those are usually not permitted. Or potentially those bookings could have been done under a different name or a different grouping, because again, our system puts everything into the permit holder's name when we pull those pieces of information. And so that may explain some of those differences that were alluded to in those correspondence. The last piece that I wanted to bring to council's attention was just a reminder of some of the options that are for council with this policy. One being that council has the opportunity to set the terms of the policy. I've written the policy suggesting a 3-year agreement. Council may wish to shorten that to a 1-year agreement so that we can take a look at some of how things are going before moving into longer term agreements. Also a reminder that we're looking for the set cost per square foot as desired. That number is written in the report is still changeable. That's not a fixed price point. And as well that council may choose any option to implement the policy, again, being the first right of refusal based on determined metrics or in any other way that council would like to direct administration. And with that, I'll sit back and listen to the question.
Thank you, Manager Young. Councilors, questions, comments? Councilor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was told I'm out of questions, so it's more commentary, and I think it's important for the rest of council. And I will have a question just for clarity purposes tonight. So I did do a little bit of digging just with the recent report that came out. And Kenora Rec Center, the main rec center in Kenora, is currently charging 66 cents per square foot for their storage space. So just taking that into consideration when we're making the decision tonight. I did have the opportunity to speak to EMO, and one of their spaces is an annualized fee, so it's not per square foot. However, it's pretty close in alignment when we consider, I guess, the maintenance and the care that we take for our facility here versus the lack of care. of the space there. Like they don't do renovations and things like that. They don't even paint. There's no benches. There's no nothing in that particular facility. So I did want to put that on the table. But I do want to clarify tonight, just before we go into making this decision. So for option 1, with right of refusal, that means that folks in their existing places wouldn't change unless they followed the policy and went on the wait list and made that change, correct? Nobody will be shifting out of their spaces otherwise.
Manager Young.
Through the chair, that is correct. We would go to the dedicated use spaces that are currently being held to ask if that group is interested in continuing to hold that space. If they indicate yes, we would move forward into the agreement. If they indicate no, they would have an option to put themselves on a wait list for another room that may come available as we go through the process.
Further question? Oh, Councillor Olson?
Thank you. I guess I have a suggestion for consideration for tonight around our decision. I'm suggesting 75 cents a square foot for storage space, $2 a square foot for the dedicated, or is that what we're calling dedicated spaces? A 3-year agreement with a set cost over those 3 years, just to really evaluate, I think, this new transition. And I'm agreeing with option 1. I think that's the fairest option.
Thank you for your input, Councillor Olson. Councillor Behan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. This is a very difficult decision for me because I certainly respect and appreciate all the user groups we have and all the wonderful things they do for our community and for our young people, whether it's hockey, figure skating, or whatnot. And I want to do full disclosure that I did have an opportunity to tour the Lakers dressing room facility last week and to see for myself what they were talking about. I did not see any other dressing rooms, including the Border Skating Club or the Muskie Boys and Girls Clubs dressing rooms either. So full disclosure on that. It's tough for me because no matter what option we pick, someone's going to be disappointed. It's either the Lakers or the Border Figure Skating Club or Border Skating Club right now is how I see it. Because to me, the wild card right now is the Fort Francis Girls and Women's Hockey Association, because it seems like now we've got a 5th user group looking for and we have 4 designated spaces. So someone's going to be the odd person out, and I don't know how that's going to work. That's how I'm reading it anyway. So I guess my question for Mr. Young, we've had 3 junior A teams in town since I believe 2001. It was the Borderland Thunder, then it was the Junior Sabres, now it's the Lakers. Have they always occupied the same dressing room over all those years? Do you know?
Manager Young.
I'm going to defer here to the CAO just with my limited knowledge of the space.
CAO Rob.
Thank you, through the chair. I believe that yes, they have had the same dressing room. The Lakers do have some other space, and I'm not 100% sure if the other clubs had some of that auxiliary space as well.
Go ahead, Councillor Behan.
So for me tonight, it's a tough one. I appreciate Councillor Olson saying she supported option 1. I'm looking at us and I'm trying to see, because to me, option 1 supports the status quo and what we've always been doing. And while that may be the easiest way to go, I think that times have changed. It's now 2024. I'd rather look at it from the viewpoint that what is the reality today in terms of usage, members using it, the contribution to the community in other ways, whatnot. So for that reason, I'm actually leaning towards option 2. But I also, as I said, I've expressed concern now that I'm not sure I agree with the Fort Francis Girls Women's Association. I appreciate they want to have a dedicated room for the girls' dressing room. But right now, if my understanding is they have a dedicated room for the girls of their own boys' teams. So they have a place to change, away from their male teammates. But they're now looking to going into where the Lakers are currently and having a dedicated dressing room for that. So is that correct, that they are looking now to perhaps go into the Lakers room? And that would, again, I'm worried about leaving somebody out then that's already got a designated space. Thank you.
Go ahead, Manager Young.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, the Girls and Women's Hockey Association is looking at taking that dedicated use space and turning it into a space for all female athletes within the community, not just dedicated to their one specific team. The home teams would be using that during their games, but it would also be open to figure skaters, other female athletes who come in from other teams through minor hockey or whatnot. Currently, our dedicated space for female dressing is a very small and inadequate space. And so the vision for the girls and women's hockey is to turn that dressing room into a larger space for all female athletes, regardless of their sport or affiliation.
Thank you, Manager Young. Anything further, Councillor Bien? Councillor Bernetta?
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I just get clarification on that last statement from Manager Young? What area are you specifically talking about that the women and girls hockey are looking at converting?
Go ahead.
Thank you again, Your Worship, to Councillor Bernetta. The Women's and Girls Hockey Association has expressed interest in the room that is currently held by the Lakers Association.
Okay, so that would be more in line with option 2, I believe. So I tend to agree with Councillor Bien that the times have changed, and maybe it is time for us to really look at, I mean, I don't want to displace anyone, and unfortunately we don't have enough rooms for all of the groups that we have. But we've seen how the women and girls hockey has really taken off, and I really believe in equitable space for all groups. So I would tend to look at possibly some sort of shuffling, hopefully that we could, make it work for everyone. And I know that's difficult, and I know that I'm not giving you the answer, but I just think we should open up to option 2. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bernetta. Further comments? Councillor Mackey?
Thank you, Your Worship. I am tending to agree with Councillors Bien and Bernetta, and I used this as an analogy. So I just won Lotto Max 70 million 20 years ago, and I decided to rent 10 hours a day for 7 days a week so I can go skating 1 hour a day. But historically, I've rented the most ice time, but it only got used for an hour a day. Option 1 is going to suggest that I get to keep that because I'm Johnny Rich Guy and can afford to rent 10 hours of ice a day for 1 hour of skating for one person. So I'm leaning more towards how many people are using it, who's getting the biggest usage out of it, and who is benefiting the complex and the community the most, I guess. So with all that having been said, I'm leaning to option 2.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Pritchard?
I'm in support of option 1 with the agreement for 1 year, and perhaps things can be worked out between all the groups as opposed to being imposed by council. So I vote for option 1 for 1 year.
Thank you. Councillor McTaggart?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Young, is there somebody's going to be out in the end if we go with option 2? Is it my understanding that there's not enough room for all the groups that are requesting space?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, again to Councillor McTaggart. Yes and no, potentially. It depends on the discussions and the decisions that are had by the user groups. As this interim chief had alluded to earlier, there are other spaces that are used by the groups. So, for example, the Lakers have their dedicated dressing room, but they also have additional storage spaces within the facility. There's a possibility that through the conversations that they don't rent all of the spaces that they're currently holding, and then that opens up additional spaces for other groups. If all current user groups say yes to taking a dedicated space, that would leave a group out. Depending on the metrics that council wants us to make that decision on, it is potentially the Border Skating Club or potentially the Lakers that are going to lose their current space.
Follow up?
Thank you. Instead of a council-imposed decision, have all the user groups come together and had a discussion? My understanding is that the Lakers are prepared to put some money into this to help another group in a transition, and have all the groups been brought together to have a discussion that doesn't involve council having to dictate one way or the other?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. There has not been a formal meeting of all user groups around this conversation. There has been conversations that I'm aware of that are similar to what you are suggesting. One group is approaching the other group with money and potential refurbishment of new space that they have, and the group that is on the receiving end of those proposals are not wanting to vacate the space because of the historical significance of that space that they're currently in. And so, yes, the groups have tried to have those conversations outside of bringing it to the council table. I do not believe that there is a way forward of leaving it into their hands to make those decisions.
Thank you.
I just wonder if that's maybe a possibility before we enact something. And just one other comment on the
Go ahead.
Councillor Olson's comment about the square footage charges. I think in having done a tour, and I will, full disclosure, admit I was with Councillor Bien when we did the tour of the facility. But the storage areas that I saw were of two qualities. One is underneath the bleachers, hunched over, not able to stand up, not very well lit. And then there's other storage areas up on the main floor. I think there's possibility for two different rates of storage, and the dedicated use, I'm okay at $250 a foot.
Go ahead.
The rooms that you're referring to, Councillor McTaggart, on the upper floor are not designated as available for rent as designated spaces. Those are indicated on the list in the report as being retained by the town for town storage. The under bleachers and or closet spaces that are available for storage space are relatively the same, and a few are a little bit bigger than the others, but they offer the same piece, and that's why we decided to go with square footage as a equal opportunity for that pricing.
Thank you for that. CAO Rob.
Thank you, through the chair. Just going back to you, Councillor McTaggart's first comment. At the end of the day, we have 5 groups interested in dressing rooms, and we have 4 dressing rooms. So whether they try and work together to come to some sort of arrangement, or council directs administration to implement in some capacity, that's the reality. So just bear that in mind.
Councillor Mackey, go ahead.
So when the Ice for Kids complex was built versus now, times have evolved, and yes, now we have very active girls, women's league. We have need for 5, but we only have 4. So have we looked into the possibility of building some extra facilities attached to the outside of the complex somewhere where you can put a few more fair-sized locker rooms or rooms in for these groups that are growing?
Do you want to take this one? I don't know if that's a question that an engineer likes.
Probably not. I mean, we can do anything you want. How much money do you want to spend doing it? We're trying to work through a $5 million renovation project on that facility right now and are rapidly running out of municipal funds to put toward it. So if you start talking about doing additions to the building or building additional buildings outside of that, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars. And where is that money coming from is the question.
So just in the interest of clarification, you made a very clear point. There's 5 groups wanting rooms, there's 4 rooms. So I guess I address this to you, Manager Young, and not meaning to put you on the spot. But that's the reality. So what's going to happen with the 5th group? They're not going to disband. We want them to continue. What will happen with the 5th group?
Thank you, Your Worship. So if we were to go with option 1, first right of refusal, as current situation would leave the Women's and Girls Hockey Association without a dedicated space. We can, as we move through the term of the agreement, 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, whichever it is that council decides, we can work with women and girls hockey to find additional storage spaces, potentially label some of our other rooms that are associated with the ice rentals as girls-only rooms. There's options for continued communication and option finding with that group. They've brought their proposal to us of what they would like to see with that change room, but that's not something that they are steadfast into. They are open to the conversation of whichever solution we can provide for them. And so if we were to stick with option 1 for, again, the 1 year or the 3 year term, that does give administration time to work with the Women's and Girls Association to find alternate solutions that may achieve the goals that they are trying to achieve.
Thank you. So I'm going to make a suggestion. First of all, Councilor Bernetta, did you have a question?
Yes, sir, Your Worship. I just having heard what Nathan just said, I believe that making a decision tonight might be premature, and having something in place for 1 year while we try to work some other options out is more attractive to me, because I feel like there isn't an easy answer here, and I feel like more work needs to be done. So I would agree with perhaps going with option 1 for 1 year and working towards some better solution. Thanks.
You read my mind, Councilor Bernetta. So here's what I think. I think, first of all, that this is a decision that council needs to make. It's not a decision I think that user groups should make. The arena is funded with taxpayer dollars, and we operate it at a loss, so we are subsidizing all of the user groups there. I don't have enough information to make what I believe would be a good, informed decision this evening, because I really believe in equity, and I think that any process we have in place has to be based on fairness and transparency. But it's not a simple situation. And first of all, I think people need to remember that not everyone using that facility is on ice skates. We have other user groups like air cadets and swimmers who also want dedicated space, and I think they need to be taken into account. So I think if we're going to decide on, I guess, who gets what space or who gets first pick, I would like to see some sort of point system in place that accounts for a number of variables. And I don't have a perfect system tonight, but just throwing out some things. It could be something such as total dollars spent, number of young people involved in the program, benefit to the community, things like that. You could come up with a system where points are awarded that take into account the holistic use of the facility. Because let's face it, that facility is there for the use of the entire community. The other thing I'd like to know, and I know that Manager Young hasn't had a chance to do this yet, is there are so many ice services and arenas, sports complexes in the province of Ontario. I'm sure that we're not the only one facing this dilemma. I know that a lot of the facilities are older, and so they won't have put in enough rooms to keep up with the demand. So I would like to find out, I would like to get a report on what is being done in other parts of the province. Let's not reinvent the wheel tonight. So I agree with Councillor Burnetta and Councillor Kircher. I think what we should do is we should go with option number one for a year, and that gives us the chance then to do further investigation, because it is a complex matter. And then at the end of that year, we can review how option one worked, and is there a need to revise or change. So that's my suggestion. Councillor Kircher?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also add, I mean, if there is a user group that has funds available to contribute to doing something, that should be explored as well.
Sure.
At least to all members of council.
Yeah. Other questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, maybe Mr. Young again can maybe answer this one. I think if I read the correspondence from the Border Skating Club, they said they have maybe 90 members now. I'm just curious in terms of each class or group that they hold each session, what would the numbers be per session in terms of how many kids would be in the dressing room at any one time in a day of the week, or if you know what I mean? Thank you.
Manager Young.
Through the chair to Councillor Behan, that is not a metric or a question that we ask our user groups. The town of Fort Francis is concerned with the creation of the permit and the collection of the permit dollars. The use and how many people attend that space and use is not a piece that we include into that permit or follow up with. So that would be a question that in this year process of potentially approaching those groups and trying to find out that information. But that's not something that the town looks at when creating those permits.
Anything else? I'll call the question that's on the floor before us. You can vote for it, or you can vote against it. If you vote against it, then we need to put something else on the floor. And if that happens, I'm suggesting that we go for the 1 year while we investigate the rest. So I'll just read the recommendation again because it's been a while since I read it. The council received report AR-24-0563 as additional information to report AR-24-0553, and that council adopt the suggested edits to the facility rental policy 2.5 as presented in report AR-24-0553, and the council direct administration to present an updated 2024 schedule of fees bylaw, including the new fees for dedicated room use and storage space at the Memorial Sports Center, to council for approval. And the council direct administration to implement the policy updates according to option 1 as outlined in the analysis option sections of report AR-24-0553. Further discussion? Councillor McTaggart?
Can we amend a proposed amendment that option 1 be for 1 year?
You can. So you're proposing that the resolution remain as is, but the timeline be changed. I think it was from 3 years to 1. Manager Young?
I believe that amendment would come in and that council adopt the suggested edits to the facility rental policy, is that 3-year pieces exists within the policy. So we can update to change the policy to read as 1 year. So that would be adopt the suggested edits to the facility rental policy as amended in AR.
Okay. I'm just going to verify with the clerk that we can do that.
That's
Yeah, so the recommendation just will have in it that the policy, it'll be accepted as written, except in the policy it'll be changed to 1 year. Councilor McTaggart?
just for clarity, then option 1 through that document will be for 1 year, so while there's more study is done?
Correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else before I call it? Councilor Olson?
One question, I guess following up on your suggestion for the additional report, are we going to put that right in the motion?
Again, I'll check with the clerk. No, so we don't need it in the resolution. The understanding is that in that year, another report will be generated.
Okay. And my second question, are we also voting on the suggested square footage fees?
It's the entire policy.
Okay. So I'm going to put it to council, I guess, for discussion. I'm not 100% on board with the amount. One, I don't think we have a ton of information at this point either. But my other, I guess, thought at this point is if we are going to be collecting user fees for the year, could we perhaps put the fees collected back into building that 5th dressing room?
So what I'm going to suggest is that we'll vote on the recommendation as is, and if council approves it, it's approved. If council likes your suggestion, they'll vote against it.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, so the resolution then has been modified in the policy. I don't need to attack on a friendly amendment. It's going to be for 1 year, and in that year, a report will be generated, and at the end of the year, we'll have this discussion again. Bearing in mind that Councillor Olson is not happy with the rental rates, so if you two are not happy with the rental rates, then you vote against this. Calling the question, all in favor? Hands up so I can see clearly, please. Okay, it carries. Opposed? Okay. Thank you, councillors, for your input. That was a good discussion. Still on community service reports, 10.2. Recommendation reads that council directs administration to continue the pilot project for summer ice availability starting July 8, 2024, and that council direct administration to open summer ice sales on a 1-hour basis to accommodate additional program opportunities, and that council direct administration to bring a report to council at the end of the pilot project to evaluate the success of the project. And I believe Manager Young would like to comment.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I just wanted to provide an update to the report since the report had been written and submitted for the agenda. There has been some additional summer ice purchased. And so on page 3 of your report, I just want to provide a couple of updated numbers for you. We have secured an additional 20 hours of sold ice that impacts August ice specifically. The total number of hours in August is now 98. The total summer hours is now 231. The August revenue is 13,941. The overall summer revenue is up to 32,862, which brings us to 79.3% towards the target of the 291 hours. And so administration is recommending that we continue to move forward with the pilot project with all of the other pieces that you have taken into account when reading the report. And I can answer any questions if needed.
And just before we go to questions, I need a mover and seconder to have this officially on the floor. Councillor Mackey, Councillor McTaggart. And Councillor McTaggart, I sense you have a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Some comments and then a question. I support this as a pilot project and as an economic driver for the community. And I certainly support the addition of 1-hour time slots to try and sell more time. And I know that you indicated that you have groups possibly waiting once they know that this is in fact in place. So that's also great, and option for shinny and public skates and so on. And you'll continue to promote the time slots that are available. I would like to also see a report on the success of this in early fall, if possible, from administration. But the report has to be on a pure ice rental profit loss analysis. No accounting for non-ice rentals such as space rental or summer day camps. We need to see this as a standalone project and if it works or not. I think we need to really prove it out from a business point. Do you have any, my question is, do you have any indication from the manufacturer of the ice plant equipment or other arenas on the wear and tear that this will cause and shorten the potential life of the equipment? Any indication of what the impact will be?
Manager Young.
As I'm not well versed in mechanical engineering, I am going to defer to our ONF manager.
Manager Miller.
Thank you, Manager Young. Through the chair. We did factor in additional maintenance costs for this summarized pilot. We don't have specific data on the actual impact of the life of the plants. However, we do have like a Simcoe ice plant, which is, shall we say, a normal ice plant that facilities do operate year-round. So I would expect, given that we're operating for an additional 2 months, possibly anticipate an additional 15 to 20% of maintenance costs because the plant will run hard over the summer. And then beyond that, we'll just be gathering data as we go.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Councilors, further questions? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. No one is opposed. Brings us to administration report under item 11. This is operations and facilities. The recommendation reads that tender 2024-OF-03 be awarded to the Thunder Bay Multi-Trades Incorporated at an estimated cost of $543,311.26, which includes the municipal portion of HST and a contingency allowance of $50,000. And the council approved the budget overage of $71,469.78 to be covered through the federal gas tax reserve. And that prior to construction start, an open house public meeting is scheduled to ensure all property owners abutting the construction project obtain firsthand knowledge of these projects and have the opportunity to ask any questions. The exact date of the meeting is unknown at the time of the writing of this report, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract documents on behalf of the corporation of the town of Fort Frances. Could I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councilor McTaggart, Councilor Olson. Any discussion? Councilor Bien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess, for Cody. I believe it's Cody who wrote this report. Yes, thank you. I see that we have the cost here of $543,000 roughly, but in the other portion there, it was listed at $603,000, I believe it was, for Thunder Bay Multi-Trades. Would the difference be that they put $69,000 for HST, whereas the town would only be about $10,000, what our portion would be, and that's why the difference is there? Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so certainly the tender price that you see in the bid analysis between JML, Thunder Bay Multi-Trades, and LH North, in that spreadsheet, that includes HST as a whole. However, our award that we're looking to recommend here at the $543,311.26, that's just including the municipal portion of HST, which we know is reduced. Now, to clarify for those, council in the 2024 capital budget approved a pot of money of $500,000 under the federal gas tax fund reserve for this project. So you're seeing the overage that we're seeking approval for as $71,496.78. So that includes the $43,311.26 over from the Thunder Bay Multi-Trades bid, as well as the $28,000 for our engineering and consulting fees from JML Engineering. So those cumulative bring us to that overage of 70 plus thousand.
Thank you. Councilor Brunetta?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Cody. I'm just wondering if this project will close the underpass while it's being done?
Through the chair, it's an expectation and a requirement to the contract that at least one lane of vehicular traffic be opened and operating throughout construction, as well as one lane for pedestrian traffic as well.
Thank you.
Well, that's, oh, sorry, may I follow up?
You
Well,
may.
that's good to know because as we know, Fifth Street and Sixth Street are also being done this summer. So I was a little worried about being landlocked. So I'm happy to hear that at least we'll have one lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bernetta. Councillor McTaggart?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Vanjel anticipated my question, so he's answered. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. No one is opposed. Okay, that brings us to item 13, which is bylaws. Recommendation reads that the following bylaws be introduced and read and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and become law forthwith. That bylaw 26-24 being a bylaw of the town of Fort Francis to adopt an external communications policy. That bylaw 03-14AB being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 03/14 as amended -301 and, pardon me, at 301 and 325 Nelson Street. That bylaw 63-11G being a bylaw to amend the official plan 2011 as amended for 301 and 325 Nelson Street. That bylaw 27-24 being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with the NGL Group Limited for the development of the Fort Francis Museum and Culture Center Strategic Plan and Cultural Master Plan. That bylaw 28-24 being a bylaw to approve a conditional contribution agreement with the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation, number 7510200, Hallett and Owandam Project. That bylaw 29-24 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement between His Majesty the King in right of Ontario, as represented by the Solicitor General, and the Corporation of the Town of Fort Francis for the provision of additional police services. And finally, that bylaw 30-24 being a bylaw to appoint an interim fire chief for the Corporation of the Town of Fort Francis. Could I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Bernetta, Councillor Behan. Any discussion? Councillor Mackey?
Looking at bylaw 2924, the police services, if you, section 1 is suggesting we refer to Schedule A, which is here to attached. I don't see any Schedule A attached to this bylaw.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, through your worship. We were advised, you'll recall the last council meeting, this agreement was on the agenda. We do have it in draft still. The Ministry of the Solicitor General has requested to have a copy of the final bylaw so they can complete the draft because they still have it watermarked. So they need the official bylaw in order to complete the actual draft in a final version, but I can certainly share it with council when it is completed after the fact. So I do apologize for that. But good catch. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Mackey. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any further discussion? I will call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. No one is opposed. I'm kind of apologize in advance for doing this to you, but we're at notice of motion. I have a notice of motion. It's fairly lengthy. I'll step out of the chair while I present it. Deputy Mayor Behan will have the chair. I'll pass copies. Madam Clerk, make sure you save a copy for me. I neglected to keep one back. Thank you. Just before I turn the chair over to Deputy Mayor Bien, just a reminder, this is a notice of motion. It doesn't need to be moved or seconded. The motion will be presented as a resolution at the next meeting of council, and there it will need to be moved and seconded. With that, I relinquish the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have the chair. Does any member of council wish to bring forth the notice of motion?
I would, Deputy Mayor.
The floor, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So I'll read the notice of motion. You have a copy in front of you. Whereas the waters of Rainy Lake, Rainy River, and Lake of the Woods and the surrounding boundary waters and border areas represent a shared natural heritage and resource for both Canada and the United States, essential for the ecological balance, local economy, and cultural identity of the region. And whereas these shared waters necessitate a cooperative stewardship approach, underscoring the mutual responsibility of both nations to protect and preserve these vital resources for future generations, thereby sustaining the ecological, economic, and cultural prosperity of the region. And whereas large numbers of American fishing guides travel directly from American waters with American anglers to fish in Canadian waters, thereby impacting the local fishing guide and tourism industry in general and potentially conservation efforts in these waters. Whereas these activities extend beyond the summer fishing season into the winter months for ice fishing, further exacerbating the strain on local resources and the environment. And whereas American guides guiding American anglers directly into Canadian waters adversely affects the Canadian fishing and tourism businesses. And whereas these actions not only undermine the economic opportunities of Canadian fishing guides and Canadian lodge owners, but also pose a risk to the sustainable management of fish stocks and the environment. And whereas Canadian resources should first and foremost benefit Canadians and their businesses. And whereas a number of Canadian guides and Canadian resort owners in and around the Rainy River District have expressed concern about this issue. And whereas the Canadian side of these shared waters requires enhanced patrols and the adoption of advanced monitoring technologies to ensure comprehensive and effective enforcement of fishing and border regulations. And whereas there's a need for a cooperative and harmonious approach to the use and stewardship of cross-border waters that respects the laws and economic interests of both nations. And whereas fairness and reciprocity are fundamental in the management of cross-border activities, necessitating a bilateral dialogue or agreement to address and ensure that Canadian guides are afforded the reciprocal right to guide fishing parties directly from Canadian waters into American waters. And whereas this is an issue of international concern, it directly affects Ontario residents, their resources, their conservation efforts, and their economy. Therefore, be it resolved that this council expresses its strong concern over the continued incursion of American fishing guides escorting parties of American anglers directly into Canadian waters and urges immediate action to address and rectify this situation. And therefore be it further resolved that this council seeks the support of the Rainy River District Municipal Association to recognize the urgency and importance of this issue and to collaborate in advocating for effective measures to safeguard Canadian waters and regional economic interests. And therefore be it further resolved that this motion be forwarded to the Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association, NOMA, for additional support and to facilitate a collective approach to the Ontario and federal governments for diplomatic and regulatory intervention. Therefore be it further resolved that this council urges the Ontario and federal governments to engage in diplomatic dialogues with their American counterparts, aiming to develop joint policies or agreements that provide a clear and enforceable framework for the cross-border fishing activities, ensuring the sustainable use and protection of shared resources. And therefore be it further resolved that the Council of the Town of Fort Frances supports MP Marcus Pulowski in advocating to the federal government for greater enforcement of border regulations and laws on lakes and waterways in the Rainy River District in regard to the issue of cross-border fishing as well as the issue of illegal entry. Therefore be it further resolved that this council calls upon all relevant federal and provincial agencies to collaborate with their American counterparts to establish clear enforceable regulations and procedures that ensure the sustainable and equitable use of shared water resources, protecting the interests of border communities, economies, and the environment. And therefore, be it further resolved that this council recognizes the importance of engaging a broader coalition of stakeholders, including environmental organizations, indigenous groups with fishing rights, and relevant non-governmental organizations focused on water resource management in the dialogue and efforts to protect and preserve shared water resources. And therefore, be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to MP Marcus Pulowski, MPP the Honorable Greg Whitford, Minister of Northern Development and Minister of Indigenous Affairs, MPP the Honorable Graydon Smith, Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, all municipal councils in the Rainy River District, Grand Council Treaty 3, the Sunset County Métis, the Rainy River Municipal Association, the Northwest Ontario Municipal Association, the Fort Francis Chamber of Commerce, the Sunset County Travel Association, and the Rainy River Future Development Corporation. And with that, I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding this notice of motion? Just get tabled. Okay, well, seeing none, I was just going to say that as Mayor Alex alluded to, there will be no vote on this tonight. It's just a notice of motion, and it'll come forth at a future meeting. So I now relinquish the chair back to Mr. Mayor Halkus. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And that brings us to item 15, which is a closed session. And I have a resolution that says that council now meet in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to 1, 833 Portage Avenue, list price. This follows under 239C, which is a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And 2, a labor relations matter, which falls under 239D, labor relations or employee negotiations. I need a mover and seconder to move in camera. Councillor Mackey, Councillor Behan. Any discussion? Councillor Kircher?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will continue my perception of a conflict I will have with the first 833 Portage Avenue.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. No one is opposed. And Councillor Kircher has declared a conflict on item 1. Finished its closed session, and I will report that we discussed a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, and the instructions given were to proceed as directed. We discussed a labor relations matter, and the instructions were given to proceed as directed. We reviewed the closed meeting minutes of April 8th, 2024, and I have a resolution that says that council approved the closed meeting minutes of April 8th, 2024 as presented. Could I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Mackey, Councillor Behan. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. No one was opposed. That brings us to the confirmatory bylaw. Recommendation reads that bylaw 31-24 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Fort Francis be introduced, read, and finally passed, signed by the Mayor and Clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and become law forthwith. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bernetta, Councillor Olson. I keep wanting to say Councillor Mandy. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. No one is opposed. And finally, I have a recommendation reads that having reached the hour of 7:53, this meeting of the Council of the Town of Fort Francis be now closed. Mover and seconder, Councillor McTaggart, Councillor Mackey. All in favor? That's carried.